Alrighty, episode 2 of my Twilight read through the official illustrated guide. Very informal, unscripted. Alright, episode 1 was my intro. I read the blurbs on the book jacket. I said how many pages there were. I explained why I was doing this. I explained what I was doing. If you missed that, I recommend go back and hear that, otherwise you might be a little bit lost. But no more of that. We're starting this official, and we're diving right in. We are no longer going to sit around and discuss. We're just getting right into the meat. And we're going to open up with a bang. Because first thing on our list is the first two parts, the introduction and a conversation with Shannon Hale. Alright, we got an intro from Steffi herself. And, you know, once again, if you've read my recaps, you know how much I hate the introduction versus preface versus prologue thing. So yeah, once again, she's written an actual preface, but doesn't call it one. Oh, Jesus. Okay, so fine. My apologies now. I'm gonna have to edit this down. When I don't pause this, I don't stop the narration, so there are gonna be long pauses I'm gonna have to edit out. So if you hear anything weird, that's just me cutting out a big chunk of silence as I read. So off we go. Introduction, dear reader. Working on this guide has given me a chance to reflect on how much the story has changed my life. And it's gonna give me a chance to reflect on how much it's changed mine. One of the best ways to have that things have changed is the opportunity I've had to get to know so many of my readers. You don't do that many public press junkets or anything. You don't really know your readers at all, except the screaming 12-year-olds, which are the only ones you really bother to interact with. So that's a funny statement. I would never presume to expect that all the questions have been answered, but fingers crossed, I think we got the big ones, plus many that no one's ever asked me before. If I skim through, like, none of my questions have been answered. You know, I already saw... Okay, much love. Yeah, much hate from me. Okay, there's our intro. I'm not gonna bother with the note from the publisher. I'm looking at it, but yeah. Many of these questions have already been answered online, so, you know, we don't really need to hear them that they're talking about, so. Okay, conversation with Shannon Hale. This is a big 66-page interview with Stephanie Meyer. I'm going to read it. I'm warning you now, this is probably going to be a 2-part episode, maybe even a 3-part, depending on how long this takes me. So, off we go. Yeah, right off. Right off. When Megan, my publisher, came to me with the idea of doing an interview for the guide, I started to come up with a list of reasons why I couldn't in my head. Interviews always make me uncomfortable, and really, what question haven't I answered at this point? A big one. Can Leah not have children ever? Is she permanently, you know, infertile now? You flat out refused to answer that one. Who's Embry's father? You haven't answered that one. You haven't answered a ton of questions. What are you talking about? And interviews make you uncomfortable because people ask questions and you just flat out admit you don't know because you haven't thought about your universe beyond, oh, Edward and Bella have the sparkliest, most epic love ever. And they're so rich and beautiful and amazing, and it's my little self-insert fantasy, and I don't want to bother with all the specifics and actual world building. That's why interviews make you uncomfortable, because there are people who have actually thought about the stuff you've written, and you don't have answers for them. I love hanging out with authors. Yeah, because it makes you feel like a real one. I've read all your stuff and sporked it. You do nothing but sit. I'm an author, a real writer. So you have to emphasize, I love hanging out with real writers because, you know, I'm a writer. See, I'm an author. I'm a writer. It's so affected. Ugh, she calls Shannon Hale her Baffy, best author friends forever, B-A-F-F. Again, we have to change the usual BFF and emphasize, author. We're authors. I write. How many times are you going to do that? And this interview takes place August 29th, 2008. This is released in 2011. Nearly 3 years after it. Don't you think you'd want to... You didn't even bother updating? You could have done 2010. I would have taken 2010. I understand publishing takes a while, but August 29th, 2008? Had Breaking Dawn even been released? Oh my god! You had a dream. You have a dreamsicle. And she's saying she should tell the story of her dream. Because she wants to get it on record. How many times is she gonna tell that dream of the sparkly boy in the meadow? How many times is she gonna tell that before it gets redundant? Because I'm getting tired of it. I have sporked so many comments where she talks about that. Every single interview she gives, she tells the stupid story of her dream of the sparkly boy in the meadow. And now she's saying we should get it on record here in 2008. So, again. Okay, something about the dream here. It says it was mostly about how much he wanted to kill her, and yet how much he loved her. I see no mention of vampire there. Where did the vampire come in? Why did you choose vampire for a sparkling boy in a meadow? Why didn't you dismiss it as, wow, my brain dreamed up a sparkling vampire in a meadow saying how much he wanted to kill this chick? Wow. Most people dismiss that as, I shouldn't take NyQuil and Sudafed before going to bed. But no, not Meyer. There was a thin line between what he was going to choose. Oh, you tip your hand so bad. You just flat out said it right there. He's in love with her, but he wants to kill her. This is not an effort of him, trying to do what's right. He loves this girl, but he's a horrible monster, but he has no desire to kill her because he loves her and because it is wrong. No. He was going to choose? That doesn't imply he was driven insane with bloodlust, okay? You already confirmed that in Midnight Sun, but for anyone who doesn't read that, it's right there, page 3 of this thing. Right there, I read the line. So I knew how close it was. I mean, there was just a thin line between what he was going to choose. He was going to choose either to allow this girl he supposedly loves so much to live, or choose to kill her. Choose. Okay? Choose. Don't give me... You dream up psychotic people and write epic romances about them. What's wrong with you? I had recently started realizing that my memory was going and I could no longer remember whom I had said something to yesterday. Does that explain your lack of continuity? Oh yeah, blame it on your children. That's awful. Oh my gosh. Okay, I started writing it out. It wasn't the dream so much as that day of writing that made me a writer, because the dream was great and it was a good story. It was a dude in a meadow telling. Okay, well that's not my point. That's not my point. She wrote it all down and said, but writing it down and making it real, being able to go back and reread the sentences was just a revelation to me. It was an amazing experience. Wow, this is what it's like to write down stories. No, it isn't. That's not writing down stories. You're jotting down notes of a dream you had. That's not writing a story. No wonder she can't write. She doesn't even know what it is. How are you an English major? Oh my gosh, this is worse than anything else I've ever read in her talking about how the dream got her started as a writer. She thinks writing down notes about a dream she had makes her a writer. Yeah, you and every 12-year-old soother on fanfic.net. I've read bad Harry Potter fanfic that put more effort into writing a story down than you did, apparently. She's talking about how she used to paint. I'm not going to criticize that. I've never seen her paintings. I'm not going to talk about that. But here's the thing. I actually can relate to her on this point. I was not a great painter. It was not something I could have pursued as a career by any stretch of the imagination. I could see a picture in my head, but I could not put it on canvas the same way it was in my head. That was always a frustration. I got you there. I have a ton of images in my head, but I can't draw a lick. I can't. I just can't. So I have all these images in my head that I can't put down on paper. It sucks. But here you go. When I started writing, I immediately had a breakthrough. I can make it real if I write it, and that's exactly the way I see it in my head. I didn't know I was able to do that. Hint. You're not. I never, ever get an image of what you're trying to tell me when I read your stuff. I have no idea what Wardo looked like beyond bronzed, tousled hair and butterscotch eyes. Which, you know, judging by how you described him in Bree Tanner, even that was wrong. You described his hair as bronze and mentioned red highlights once. Otherwise, it was always bronze, dark, and then we find out in Bree Tanner he's a redhead. Yeah, you obviously can't. And the only image I get of Bella is of you. And the only image I get of Jacob is he's brown. Which, you know, that's racist. So, you obviously can't make it real and write it down exactly the way you see it in your head, because for some reason you see it in your head and write down a few overblown purple prose descriptions of it. I still don't get what you're trying to say. I have no idea what your characters look like. So I feel bad about this. I don't like doing this, but it's the only way I can imagine these characters as people in my head when I'm reading your stories. I see the people who play them in the films. That's it. And judging by the pictures I've seen in here, that's not who you see. So, you fail. You can't do it in writing either. I'm sorry. I don't get an image of anything you write. Purple prose does not an image make. Okay, writing on the meta scene. Where'd you go from there? I continued to the end chronologically. No, you didn't. You started in the meadow. Which I don't always do anymore. Yeah, I know. I believe, Kat Makura, my sporking partner on Das Sporking, put it best. She said she wrote like that, and it looked like a patchwork quilt of suck. Your stories don't jive. You jump from one place to another. I can tell when you don't write in chronological order because you cannot link them back up. I had lettered all my chapters instead of numbering them, so I went back and did A, and then I think I had chapter 13 being E, because I thought maybe 5 or 6 chapters of material would cover the beginning, and then that was 12, so I was surprised about that. Yeah, 12 chapters. Most of them pointless. Chapter 4 had no purpose. You could have combined stuff, you could have cut stuff out, you could have easily made those 12 6. You just padded your word count is all you did. And I've seen the stuff you cut out that was originally supposed to be in there, like that badminton scene. That was so pointless and stupid. Yeah, it just kept going. I was thinking, wow, this is taking a long time. It took you 3 months. But here's the thing. I understand a story running away from you. I've had that happen. I've watched it happen to Mrs. Hyde. I had a fic in mind I wanted to write that was about 10,000 words. I had that intended. Well, now it's, I've got the first fic outlined, and it's going to be a trilogy. The first fic is 40 chapters long in my outline. Maybe more, maybe less, not sure how that's going. Started out as a 10,000 word idea. The same with Hyde. I write a suggestion. Write a ficlet from this character's POV if you're having trouble getting in his head. She says, okay, I'll write a little 5,000 word blurb. Yeah, 70,000 words later, we've got a novella. Our fic, The Wedding Crashers, did the same thing. We wanted it 6 chapters long. It's 12. It happens. But, I've already pointed out so much of your stuff is just padding. Chapters could have been combined. Scenes could have been excised. Conversations could have been pared down. That's what you're supposed to do in editing. You cut out all the unnecessary stuff. You didn't. You think everything is necessary, and it's not. So apparently, she wrote down the dream on June 2nd and finished on the 29th of August. It took her less than 3 months to do this. and reading the outtakes and the finished product, there's not much difference. Did you let your editor do anything? And, that's another problem with the editor I have. I know that authors can ignore editors if they want. And I know that the bigger the author, the more they tend to do that. So I know editors get a bad rap. I know they're often ignored and unthanked and unloved. I know all about that. Editors, their job is to be mean. Their job is to look at your story and say, this sucks. That's what they're supposed to do. Well, at least that's how I feel. You may disagree with me. But the thing is, there's a lot of simple stuff in here that's not, an issue of, no, I want to keep this in so you can't take it out. It's an issue of, tiny errors that could have been easily fixed. Her comma usage, for one, is appalling. Her fragments are appalling. She abuses the dash like a redheaded stepchild. And also, reined in versus reined in. That error is in every single thing she's written. And this is just little stuff that could have been caught. I can understand one reined in versus reined in, but it's in all of them. I think it's 3 times in Breaking Dawn. It's just a bunch of little things, like dust motes. Everyone knows about dust motes. And Charlie's amazing transmogrifying breakfast in Breaking Dawn. It's just little things. That it's not an issue of creative differences. No, it's genuine mistakes. So it makes me wonder. Maybe I'm giving her editor too much of a pass. Oh, see, you really are, Bella. I couldn't hold conversation with people. All my friends just thought I had dropped them because I lived in my own world for a whole summer. I can understand having an escapist fantasy, but, you pretty much also admitted that you pushed your own family out of your life, too, while you were off, frolicking in a meadow and masturbating over your stupid sparkly characters. There's a point when it becomes disturbing. I really hate talking about people and their personal lives. When she's putting them out here like this, for me, being a mom, especially when the kids are younger, when they get older, it's a lot easier. You have to be about them every minute, and a lot of who Stephanie is was slipping away. They're your children. It just bugs me. It makes me uncomfortable, because she sounds like she resents them for daring to take away her time. It just makes me uncomfortable. It's kind of like the Shopping with Alice aside, where Meyer made a comment that was so golden calfish, I didn't have any commentary whatsoever. Ugh. And normally, I wouldn't care, but I constantly have Meyer's emphasis on how much her faith and religion means to her, and I'm not going to get into a Mormon allegory argument here, so don't try. How much her faith means to her and all that, and then she makes a comment about Jasper being basically a god that she worships. It disturbed me. I think it's the law. When you're an English major, you have to consider being an author as a career. I was getting an English major to be an English teacher. Writing's a hobby. It's too hard to become an editor. Maybe that's why she hates them so much. That's totally contradictory to what she said. She said the editing was easier than the writing. Well, then why is it harder to become an editor than an author? You make no sense. There's no guarantee like that with writing or anything in the published industry. You're not guaranteed that you'll be able to feed yourself if you go down that path, and so I would never have considered it. I still am, a very practical person. It's not like she's thinking about what she's saying. You're the most most impractical person I've ever seen in my life. You constantly show you're sheltered, never had to worry about money, never had to worry about supporting yourself, never had to deal with actual consequences of something, ever. You constantly reveal it, okay? You're not practical.